Porter joins us now for this week's Dollars and Cents segment. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Bruce.
Hope you're surviving the cold.
So far, so good.
Yeah, I know we were talking. We'd rather be doing this on a beach down south somewhere.
Absolutely.
See if we can work that out next week.
We'll talk to Leo.
Yeah, absolutely.
You ready for this week's question?
You bet.
All right, here we go. Can I make a withdrawal from my Roth IRA for the purchase of my first home without penalties and taxes?
Hey, that's a good question. That is a possibility. I think what we got to do is understand the rules.
Okay.
We don't want to confuse a Roth IRA with a traditional IRA or qualified money. There's different rules in place. Now, in order to establish how much can I withdraw from my Roth, we got to understand how it's structured. You've got contributions that you've put into your Roth, and you have earnings, and those are called non-principal earnings or non-principal amounts. So now the rule is you can pull a lifetime maximum of $10,000 out of your Roth for a down payment for a first-time home buyer. That's one way. Now, in order to do that, that's a qualified distribution, is what they call that. Now, you can pull your principal amount out, whatever it is. You could have more than that of principal deposit. You could get access to that. But the rule applies to qualified distributions. So now there's rules that go along with qualified distributions. What they call a 5-year rule.
Okay.
You have to have your money in the Roth for 5 years minimum before you avoid tax penalty. Then, in order to avoid tax penalty, you have to be older than 59 and a half. That's one. You have to either be disabled or in that position as determined by the IRS rules.
Okay.
Or you can do what they call a qualified expense, which is education funding cost or first-time home buyer. So that is a qualifying expense that you can use it for. Or if you're dead, your beneficiaries get your Roth or your estate does.
But you don't have to worry about it at that point. Yeah.
Now, so the answer is yes, you can, up to $10,000 of qualified distribution, unlimited on your actual contributions. So if you've been frugal and put a lot of money in a Roth on your own, yeah, theoretically you could pull that out and go buy a house with it. And there's no penalties and interest.
First time home buyer.
First time.
If you already own a home, none of this applies.
That's right. See, a Roth is not taxed, and the earnings are not taxed if they're left as a retirement account. Now, whether you should take your money out or not to buy that home, that's maybe another question, because you kind of shoot yourself in the foot from a retirement planning standpoint. Could take years to recuperate the value that you've taken out to buy that home. And so there might be other alternatives to consider, especially with the low interest rate environment we're in. There might be some other things that would be more cost effective than using your retirement money.
Kind of does what you've been doing all along.
Absolutely, it does.
And you're not necessarily going to, I mean, you can't use the idea of, well, I'm going to be getting the tax benefits from owning a home. That's not going to offset.
Not necessarily, because, you know, the accumulation in your Roth could be substantial or it could be very minimal. You know, that's another thing you have to do, is establish, where is my Roth? If it's in a market investment, if you liquidate it now, it could be subject to losses that would take years to recuperate, or there could be a lot of gains in there and you're restricted to $10,000 on qualified distribution. So if you're in an insured type annuity, most of those annuities will have some type of surrender charge. So the IRS might say you have access, but you may have to pay a penalty to get it out of an insurance contract. So I think you just have to consider. Best thing you could do is ask an expert. That's what
usually
seek some guidance and try to get some opinions on what makes sense.
It never hurts to ask a question or two from people who are, you know, versed in this.
That's absolutely right.
Now, is this also, and I may be mistaken, is the Roth IRA something that you can take money out of for medical purposes, medical emergency, or anything like that?
Well, possibly, but you're limited to your contribution amounts. See, your contributions, there's no deduction going in, there's no tax, so you've already paid tax on that money. So if you're in a liquid Roth account, that you have access to, you could pull your contributions out for that type of emergency.
Yeah.
Whether or not you should is, again, another question, because we try not to persuade people to tap their specific retirement money for anything other than retirement.
That might be a last resort.
Kind of a last resort.
Yeah,